Welcome to episode 1 of the Pocket Recovery Show. I'm your host, Vance Hansen. Each episode, we dive into the raw, real causes of fear, anxiety, and addiction. We give you the exact biohacks needed to break the cycle, quiet the internal chaos, and reclaim control of your life. Think of this podcast as the deeper, conversational extension of what we're building at pocketrecovery.app, your go-to resource for real-time support. No fluff, just the strategies you need if you're moving forward. Anxiety creates the noise. Addiction promises the silence. Think about the last time your chest felt tight. Your thoughts started racing at 300 miles an hour, and an invisible hand felt clenched around your throat. In that exact moment, your brain didn't care about logic, 5-year plans, or good advice. It cared about one thing: survival. And when the internal noise gets loud enough, the human mind will grab onto whatever promise of silence is closest within reach, whether that's a drink, a pill, a screen, or a behavior. If you have ever felt caught in the crossfire of your own nervous system, wondering why you keep reacting for the very thing you swore you'd give up, you're not broken. You're hijacked. I'm glad you're here. This is a safe space. Let's track the physical reality of what that hijack feels like, because we've been conditioned to think cravings and anxiety is just a mental state. It isn't. It starts here with a subtle contraction in your intercostal muscles, the tiny bands of tissue between your ribs. Your breathing shifts up from your diaphragm into your upper chest, becoming shallow, rapid, and sharp. Your heart rate climbs, not by a few beats, but with a hard, thudding resonance that you can physically hear in your ears. A cold, microscopic film of sweat forms along your hairline and the palms of your hand. Your vision narrows, losing its peripheral softness, locking onto whatever object is directly in front of you with a rigid, hyper-focused glare. And then comes the knot. That heavy, dense, unyielding sensation in your solar plexus that feels like your stomach has been wrung out like a wet towel. You look around the room, you check your phone, you look at your calendar, you verify doors are locked, your bills are paid, and the people you love are safe. Logically, your intellect reads the environment and says, there's no emergency here. But your physical body ignores that data completely. Your biology is actively screaming that you are in immediate moral peril. Welcome to episode 1 of the Pocket Recovery podcast. I'm glad you're here. I'm your host, Vance Hansen. I'm a licensed addiction counselor and trauma professional. Today, we are going to dive deep into the trenches of human biology. We aren't going to look at addiction and anxiety from a cold, clinical, academic distance. We're looking at them from the inside out. We're mapping the precise biological loop that locks your body into an endless cycle of panic and craving. We're delivering concrete, real-time tools you need to break the loop and finally feel comfortable in your own skin. Whether you're returning to this community or stepping into this space for the very first time, I want to thank you for holding this space for our conversation today. I'm glad you're here. Settle in, get comfortable, and take a full breath. We have a lot of ground to cover. To understand why your body operates at this terrifying level of overdrive, we have to look at a fundamental design in human evolution: our autonomic nervous system, the ancient subconscious operating system that manages our heart rate, our digestion, our hormone loops, and our survival responses. It was engineered for a world that no longer exists. For 99% of human history, our ancestors lived in a landscape defined by acute, physical, time-limited stressors. Imagine an early human walking through the forest. Threats were highly specific: a predator jumping out of a bush, getting a cut and getting an infection, breaking a leg. Well, in less than a millisecond, the ancient survival brain executes a total systemic takeover. It shuts down long term projects like cellular repair, immune function, and digestion because if you don't survive the next 10 minutes, digesting your breakfast doesn't matter. It shunts blood away from your internal organs and drives it directly into your major muscle groups. It pumps your system full of high octane fuel, adrenaline to give you explosive strength, cortisol to keep you hyper alert, and glucose to feed your muscles. You either run for your life or you fight the predator. This entire event takes 10 minutes, maybe 20. If you survive, the threat is completely gone. Your body shakes out the adrenaline, your heart rate settles, and you slide back into a state of deep restorative normality. This design was simple: a baseline of deep peace interrupted by brief, necessary spikes of danger. Now let's fast forward to the year 2026. We aren't running from mountain lions anymore. Well, most of the time. But look at what our modern nervous system is forced to process from the second we open our eyes. Your alarm goes off, you pick up your smartphone. Within 3 minutes, you're flooded with a barrage of digital inputs. Breaking news alerts. Did they like my posts? Global conflicts. Economic volatility. Cost of groceries. A passive aggressive text. An email from your boss containing a micro crisis. Here's the glitch, and it's catastrophic. Your body has no idea that those inputs are just pixels. To your ancient amygdala, an email from your boss could be threatening your livelihood. Or a headline triggering financial panic, it releases the same chemical cascade as that mountain lion jumping out of the brush. Your body wasn't designed for the year 2026. Our ancestors dealt with stress that lasted 10 minutes, like running from a wild animal. Once it was over, their bodies went back to a total rest. Today, we deal with endless, invisible stressors: push notifications, emails, inflation, and texts from the second we wake up until we close our eyes. Your ancient survival brain doesn't know the difference. It thinks a predator is chasing you every time you get a text message. It fires the exact same adrenaline and cortisol loop. We've completely flipped our biology. We now live in a chronic baseline of survival mode, interrupted by tiny, fragile moments of peace. In clinical terms, we call this accumulation of stress allostatic load. Allostatic load is the literal wear and tear that your tissues, your brain, and your cardiovascular system experience when they are exposed to chronic, unyielding stress hormones. When you live in this state, your system never gets to complete the stress cycle. The adrenaline doesn't get burned off through physical running or fighting. Instead, it gets stored. It binds to your tissues and creates a constant low-grade electrical hum of anxiety that vibrates in your calves, tightens your neck and shoulders, and keeps your mind permanently scanning your environment for threats. By the time 6 p.m. rolls around, you haven't faced a single physical crisis or real danger. You've spent all day sitting at a desk or driving a car or some other job, but physiologically, your body has run a 20-mile marathon through an active war zone. Your engine is smoking, your dashboard lights are flashing, and you are redlining at 8,000 RPMs. Your system is desperate for a way out, and it will do anything to force a shutdown. To show you how this mechanical redline state actively creates the drive to escape or use, I want to step away from abstract science and look at how this plays out in the lives of two people whose stories might sound familiar to you. Let's first look at a profile we will call Sarah. Sarah is a high achieving, hyper dependable corporate professional. To the outside world, she's the definition of success. She's organized, she never misses a deadline, and she mistake proofs her entire life. But Sarah's internal reality, much different. It's an absolute nightmare. She wakes up at 5:30 a.m., and the absolute second her eyes open, she experiences a massive somatic jolt, a crushing wave of cortisol that feels like an electric shock straight to her chest. To cope with that dread, she instantly enters hypermanagement mode. She checks her email in bed. She plans out every microscopic detail of her entire day. She moves through her morning with a frantic, aggressive speed because she possesses a core driving belief. If I stop moving, if I let my guard down for even 5 or 10 minutes, the world will swallow me alive. Let's map out Sarah's physiological accumulation across a typical 12-hour day. She wakes up, and by 6:30 a.m., she's drank 2 large black cups of coffee while answering her morning emails. Caffeine binds to receptors, amplifying the already elevated cortisol. Her heart rate climbs to 95 beats per minute while stationary. By 10 a.m., she's sitting perfectly still in a high stakes team meeting. She's nodding and smiling. A colleague challenges her project. Her amygdala flags it as a survival threat. Dangerous. Adrenaline floods her blood. Her intercostal muscles lock up. 2 o'clock. She skips lunch to power through a spreadsheet error. Low blood sugar sets in, signaling a metabolic emergency to the brain. The body releases more cortisol to mobilize glucose stores. 5:30. Sarah drives home in a heavy traffic, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. Her prefrontal cortex, the logical brain, completely starved of glucose and energy. Primitive survival brain takes total control. When Sarah walks through her front door at 6:30, she isn't just tired. Her nervous system is in a state of acute exhaustion. The internal noise is deafening. Her brain screams that she needs an immediate mechanical emergency brake to stop the engine from blowing up. She tells herself she's just going to have one glass of wine to unwind. But notice the biology. That first pour hits her system. It binds to what are called GABA receptors and artificially forces a downregulation. Her shoulders finally drop. She takes her first deep breath of the entire day. Feels like relief, doesn't it? Because her primitive survival brain associates that glass of wine with the biological relief of surviving a 12-hour panic attack, it flags it as an essential survival tour. It takes the number one spot. One glass instantly turns into a bottle, leading to fragmented sleep, 3 a.m. cortisol spike, and an even higher baseline of anxiety the next morning. If you're a high achiever who works frantically all day, micromanages every detail, and stays hyper organized just to keep your anxiety at bay, watch what happens at night. By 6 p.m., your brain is entirely drained of energy and your body is stuck in fight or flight. When you reach for a drink, a pill, or a screen to numb out, you aren't doing it because you lack character. You're doing it because your body has been running a marathon for the last 12 hours straight. It's desperate for an emergency brake. You're using a chemical bridge to force a peace that your daily routine didn't provide. Now, let's look at a completely different manifestation of this red line baseline. Let's look at, we'll call him Marcus. Marcus doesn't have a high stress corporate job. He works a stable, routine schedule, but he grew up in a profoundly unpredictable, chaotic childhood home. He lived with a parent whose mood could pivot from warm and loving to violently volatile without an hour of warning. To survive his childhood, Marcus's young nervous system had to develop an extraordinary hypersensitive superpower. It had to learn how to read the microscopic shifts in his environment. He calibrated his ears to the exact weight of his parents' footsteps coming down the hall. He tracked the subtle tension lines around his mother's eyes or the specific cadence of his father's voice. Marcus is now 35 years old. The old environment is completely gone. He lives in his own apartment. He's in a relationship with a partner who is genuinely safe, steady, and loving. But Marcus's nervous system, it never got the message that the war was over. He carries an open, unarchived file on the desktop of his subconscious mind titled, "People are volatile. Watch for the shift." One evening, Marcus and his partner are cooking dinner. His partner had an exhausting, draining day at the office, so they're quiet. They're staring at their phone with their faces flat, and their tone, when they ask for the salt, it's slightly clipped. Logically, an archived nervous system would say, "Oh, my partner is just tired from work." But not Marcus's. His amygdala scans the kitchen, registers the flat facial expressions and the sharp tone, instantly pulls the lever on that unarchived past file. Before Marcus can form a single conscious thought, his system is flooded with survival chemistry. His heart spikes, his skin turns cold, he enters total hypervigilance. The internal dialogue in his head hits a red line. My partner's pulling away. She's furious with me. I did something wrong. A storm is coming. To stop the agonizing discomfort of that emotional flashback, Marcus reacts. He either snaps at his partner and picks an argument to force the hidden conflict into the open, the fight response, or physically leaves the apartment to clear his head, flight. He might also completely check out mentally, sit on the couch for hours scrolling mindlessly through short form videos to completely block out the sensation of panic. Freeze. Marcus thinks he has an anger issue or a screen addiction. He doesn't. Marcus has a nervous system that is trapped in a historical timeline, using ancient survival strategies to fight ghosts in a peaceful kitchen. To understand exactly why Sarah and Marcus react this way, we have to look at the precise neurological fracture that occurs deep inside their brain for carrying unresolved stress or past pain. Your brain operates on two primary tracks when it comes to memory processing: the explicit memory pathway and the implicit memory pathway. This is the core mechanics behind why you can't just think your way out of a chronic anxiety attack or a craving. Think of explicit memory as the traditional history book of your mind. It lives primarily in your neocortex and is heavily mediated by your hippocampus, which acts as your brain's historical archivist and time-stamping machine. When a normal, non-threatening event occurs, the hippocampus reviews it, slaps a definitive label on it that says this happened on a specific date in the past, and neatly tucks it away into a drawer. When you recall an explicit memory, you can remember the facts clearly, but your physical body remains completely calm. It is safely recognized as history. But when an experience carries a high volume of emotional pain, fear, or chronic unsafety, the entire filing system fractures. The amygdala, your ancient hypersensitive danger detector, fires an alarm sequence so violent that it triggers your brain to instantly flood with stress hormones. When these chemical messengers hit a critical threshold, they perform a shutdown on the hippocampus. They pull the plug on the time stamping machine. Because the librarian has been knocked unconscious by the sheer volume of the trauma or chronic stress, that specific file or memory, as we're speaking about, cannot be dated, archived, and stored as history. Instead, it gets dropped raw into your implicit memory system. Implicit memory is stored deep within your limbic system, the very fibers of your body and your basal ganglia. It doesn't contain words, timelines, or context. It only contains raw sensations, biological triggers, visual fragments, and physical urges. And here is the kicker: implicit memory is entirely timeless. To your amygdala, there is no calendar. It cannot read that the year is 2026. When a trigger happens today that matches an implicit profile, whether it's a quiet partner, an email from a boss, a text message, a financial strain, the amygdala doesn't remember the past. It actively reproduces it in your present physical body. Let's lay this out clearly so you can see the profound biological difference between these two internal worlds. Okay, the storage architecture of the mind. So I'm going to talk about explicit and implicit memory. Okay, think of explicit as the archive and implicit as the working desktop. With explicit, your primary brain regions are your neocortex and your hippocampus. With implicit, it's your amygdala, your basal ganglia, and nervous system tissues. So, with explicit, you get time stamping from the hippocampus, because this is a clear date, time, and historical context that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. With implicit, it's completely timeless. It operates in a perpetual this is now. So, what activation does your body have? Well, with explicit, zero. You can discuss the facts of the event without a reaction, like turning on the coffee pot this morning. Well, with implicit, it's massive. Your body's flooded with the exact original chemicals and heart rate spikes and breathing patterns that happened when that triggered memory was actually happening, because your brain can't tell the difference. Your voice even changes. Explicit, narrative. I turned on the coffee pot. Implicit, muscle tension, gut knots, panic attacks, intense cravings. Are you seeing the difference? When you're having panic, anxiety, a craving, or when you're in actual danger, your brain doesn't create the explicit memory. What's happening stays on your desktop for the next cue to open it up. So here's a neurological law. When you live with unintegrated past pain, your system is forced to run a live, high definition broadcast of your worst memories on the desktop of your subconscious mind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Imagine trying to run a highly advanced computer with 400 open Chrome tabs, 3 video editing programs running in the background, and an active virus scan running simultaneously. The computer starts to overheat. The fan screams at maximum speed, and the battery dies in minutes. This is exactly what your body is doing when you carry unintegrated past pain. Your hippocampus never time-stamped those old files, so they are running live on the desktop of your subconscious mind right now. You aren't tired because you don't sleep. You're tired because your nervous system is running an invisible marathon while you're just trying to sit on the couch. This brings us directly to the heaviest, most destructive part of the invisible trap: the absolute myth of willpower. Think about how many times you've found yourself caught in a behavioral loop or a sudden panic spike, and you've tried to use sheer intellect to fix it. You tell yourself, I have a great life. I have a roof over my head. There's literally no reason for my chest to feel like it's collapsing right now. Just breathe, think positive thoughts, list things you're grateful for. Or when a massive craving hits at the end of an exhausting day, you try to white knuckle your way through it, shouting at your own mind to just be stronger, to have some basic self control. And then, when you inevitably slip, or when the panic boils over and you reach for the glass, the phone, the substance, the shame hits. You tell yourself, I'm weak. I'm not disciplined. I guess I just don't want recovery badly enough. I need you to hear me on this, and I want you to look at me very closely. Using willpower to fix a dysregulated nervous system is like trying to use a software app to put out a fire in your living room. It's entirely the wrong tool for the job. We've been fed a massive lie that anxiety and addiction are moral failures or problems of weak willpower. Logic, long term planning, and willpower live in your prefrontal cortex, the very top layer of your brain. But survival lives in your brainstem, in midbrain, and your limbic system, ancient structures that operate entirely below your conscious thought. When your nervous system redlines, your primitive brain physically pulls the plug on your logical brain to preserve your life. Expecting willpower to stop a chronic adrenaline storm is an absolute biological impossibility. You aren't weak. You're just bringing an intellectual knife to a physiological gunfight. When we tell someone struggling with this deep loop to just stop, we're asking them to sit quietly in a burning room and ignore the flames. Let's look at the actual neurological exhaustion that occurs when your system has been redlining at 8,000 RPMs for hours on end. Your prefrontal cortex consumes an enormous amount of metabolic energy, specifically glucose and oxygen. When your amygdala is screaming all day, sending continuous false alarms through your HPA axis, your brain is starved of these resources. By 6 p.m., your logical brain is functionally turned off. It has zero fuel left in the tank. Executive function has collapsed. At that exact moment, your primitive brain enters a state of absolute emergency. It looks at the massive accumulated static electricity in your body, realizes that you are on the verge of a systemic breakdown from exhaustion, and takes matters into its own hands. It looks for a phantom break. A phantom break is any external input that can artificially mimic peace by dropping a sudden chemical curtain over the neurological noise. Your brain remembers that alcohol binds to your GABA receptors and immediately slows down neural firing. It remembers that substances can flood the nucleus accumbens with a synthetic surge of dopamine, masking the pain instantly. It remembers that a behavior or a screen can shock the system with an immediate distraction. The primitive brain doesn't care about your values, your career goals, your long term health. It only cares about one thing: stopping the pain before the machinery melts down. When you reach for that escape hatch, you are performing a survival maneuver. Your brain has classified that vice as a life saving tool. The tragedy is that the phantom brake is a biological illusion. It stops the engine for an hour, but it warps the engine block. The next morning, the rebound effect hits, your baseline anxiety climbs even higher, and you wake up with an even greater demand for an escape hatch than you had the day before. You cannot white knuckle your way out of a burning room if you don't know how to extinguish the fire. To change the behavior, we have to stop focusing entirely on the moment of choice and start focusing on the biological baseline that is driving the choice in the first place. If you're ready to step out of the crossfire of your own nervous system, you have to completely invert your approach to healing. You have to stop treating anxiety and addiction as thinking problems and start treating them as profound biological realities. We have to learn how to speak the native language of the survival brain. And that language does not contain words, logic, or intellectual arguments. The survival brain speaks only one language: physiology. Think about how a wild animal processes a threat. When a deer is startled by a loud crack in the woods, it doesn't try to change its mindset. It doesn't repeat a mantra. Its body instantly enters a high octane sympathetic state so it can run. Once it reaches safety, the deer doesn't just return to grazing immediately. It stands still. Its body begins to shake to discharge the stored adrenaline. Its breathing patterns shift. It opens its vision wide to calibrate the landscape. And only when its body settles does the brain receive the message: we are safe now. We've completely forgotten how to do this as humans. We stack stress like bricks all day long, lock the adrenaline inside our muscles, and then wonder why we feel like we're suffocating at night. To break the loop, we need what's called somatic circuit breakers. These are real-time physical maneuvers designed to manually flip your biological switch from fight or flight into rest and recovery within 60 seconds. They don't require concentration, logic, or an empty mind. They operate entirely on raw biology. Today, we're going to master two of the most powerful, scientifically validated bottom-up tools for immediate systemic downregulation. Pause, breathe, relax, and the physiological sigh, and the temperature shock. The very next time you feel a massive spike of panic, or a crushing urge to escape, or a craving, don't try to think positive thoughts. Your brain is offline. Instead, use this exact neurobiological circuit breaker. I call it pause, breathe, relax. The pause is simply understanding that something's off. I'm feeling overwhelmed, overstimulated. I'm feeling powerful emotions. The engine is spiked at 8,000 RPMs. Breathe. Take a deep breath through your nose, and right at the top, snap a second top off inhale to completely pack your lungs. Then let out a long, slow, vocalized sigh through your mouth until you are completely empty. Doing this just 3 times manually forces your heart rate to slow down via your vagus nerve within seconds. It's the fastest way to prove to your brain that you are safe without saying a single word. Let's walk through the precise execution and the hard science behind the two tools I spoke about. Because when you understand the mechanics, you can deploy them with absolute confidence when the storm hits. The first tool: pause, breathe, relax. It's a breathing pattern discovered by neuroscientists that is naturally hardwired into human and mammalian biology. When you're highly stressed or redlining, the tiny air sacs in your lungs called alveoli collapse, causing carbon dioxide to build up in your bloodstream, which signals an immediate suffocation alarm to your brain. How this works is you acknowledge this is happening, take a deep, rapid inhalation through your nose, and at the peak of that breath, force a second sharp stacked inhale to pop those collapsed air sacs back open. Finally, let out an extended, slow sigh through your mouth until your lungs are completely empty. Repeat this 3 times. The prolonged exhale changes the pressure in your chest cavity, forcing your vagus nerve to secrete acetylcholine, another neurotransmitter which manually drops your heart rate and signals safety to the amygdala within 30 seconds. The second tool, the temperature shock. This is like an emergency reset button. When your internal noise is at a 9 out of 10, when you're in the middle of an explosive panic attack or fighting a severe white knuckle craving, your mind is too chaotic to coordinate a breathing exercise. You need an immediate systemic circuit breaker. Go directly to a bathroom or a freezer. Fill your hands with ice cold water or grab a piece of ice. Submerge your face in the water for 15 seconds or put the ice in firmly in your hand, rub it on your cheekbones or the back of your neck. This action immediately triggers the mammalian dive reflex, an ancient evolutionary response. Your brain instantly assumes you've entered freezing water, forcing your heart rate to drop sharply by 10 to 25%, shunting the blood flow back to your core, and instantly disrupting the neurological cascade of panic to bring your analytical prefrontal cortex back online. As we close this foundational first episode together, I want you to take a deep, unconditional breath. If you recognized your own tired, hypervigilant soldier in the case profiles we shared today, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. Your anxiety, your hypervigilance, your frantic drive to stay organized weren't defects. They were brilliant, highly adaptive superpowers that kept you safe and alive during the chaotic chapters of your past. But I need you to remind your system that the old war ended a long time ago. You're not standing in the forest with a mountain lion behind you. You're not stuck in that toxic relationship. You're right here in the present moment, in the year 2026, and you're safe. Your scaffolding for the week ahead is incredibly simple. We aren't going to try to fix your entire life or rewrite your entire history by tomorrow morning. We're just going to practice building a real brake pedal. Every single morning this week, before you touch your smartphone, before you let the world flood your system with cortisol, I want you to sit on the edge of your bed and execute 3 consecutive pause, breathe, relaxes. Deep sigh, relax your muscles. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And as you exhale, drop your shoulders and relax your muscles. Every single evening when you transition from your productive day to your rest time, do it again. Start teaching your biology how to slow down before an emergency hits. If this conversation brought you a sense of comfort, clarity, or biological validation today, please hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a raw, honest review on whatever platform you're listening on, and share this specific episode with just one person in your life who always seems to be running on empty. Let them know they aren't broken either. In our next episode, we're diving deep into the myth of the phantom break, exploring the brutal neurobiology of the chemical rebound effect when we seek dopamine through drugs, alcohol, and behaviors. We'll look at exactly why the things we use to calm us down today are structurally manufacturing our cravings and panic attacks tomorrow morning. Until then, keep your feet on the floor, listen to your body, and take care of yourself. We'll talk soon.